Welcome into the midweek mailbag show presented to you by Fantasy Points. My name is Nick Skrip, and I am your host every single week for this specific show where I take questions from Twitter and the Discord and answer them on a weekly basis through this fantasy football season. So we are now heading into week 5. A lot of good questions to answer here. Majority of these questions actually came from Discord this week. I asked them on Twitter and in the Discord. So if you are seeing this and you are not part of that Discord, make sure you subscribe to Fantasy Points today. I also ask on Twitter through the Fantasy Points media account as well. Let's kick things off. This is our only Twitter question this week. Again, the rest are from Discord. At Jason Neff 14, 3-1 in Superflex League and lost Tua. Other QBs are Allen and Tannehill with 2 roster spots available. Would you aggressively bid on both Pickett and Bridgewater, and who would you prioritize? So you might see this show after your waiver run, but I feel like we can cover some good topics here. So obviously for this specific fantasy manager, you're good with Josh Allen. Ryan Tannehill right now, the QB 20, averaging 14.09 fantasy points. So for Tannehill, he's got Washington next. They are coming off of a game where Cooper Rush was able to throw for 223 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Hurts the week prior, Jalen Hurts for the Eagles, 340 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Goff week 1, 256 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. So maybe Washington hasn't given up like the most fantasy points per game to the quarterback position, but quarterbacks have been successful. So I mean, can you roll with Tannehill this week in that sort of situation? I think so. I think the matchup's fine to do that. I don't think Tua's timeline is going to be more than this week. If I wanted to pick up one of these guys, though, between Pickett and Bridgewater, so Kenny Pickett being the QB for the Steelers, rookie QB, Bridgewater filling in for Tua in Miami. I think if it's for 1 week, I would roll with Teddy Bridgewater versus the Jets. It's a good matchup. He's a veteran quarterback we've seen play plenty in the league before. I think in most waiver wire decisions, though, I'd rather roll with someone I would have for the long run. So it gives you more of an insurance if later down the road, one of your other quarterbacks gets banged up. So if I only needed a guy for 1 week, Teddy Bridgewater against the Jets, I don't think Tua is going to be out for a long time. I'm hoping he's not. But for the long run, I think I'd roll with Kenny Pickett, the rookie, because again, for your QB depth, if Allen goes down later and you picked up Bridgewater and Tua's back, now you have Bridgewater, but it doesn't do anything for you on your team because Tua's healthy and they're obviously not both going to play. So my advice here: roll with Tannehill. I lean Pickett for the longevity of the play, since you can go with what you have for this given week. So you can go Josh Allen, Ryan Tannehill, have Kenny Pickett, and then when Tua's back, now you have 4 quarterbacks instead of 3. Next question on the list. So the rest here are from Discord. Greek 121. I'm 1-3. Should I tank and trade Naji, Lamb, and Pitman for Taylor and Dillon? Question mark. I lost Javonte this week, so that was terrible to lose Javonte Williams to both an ACL and I think LCL. Tear in his knee, horrible news for a guy that we were super excited about this season to potentially break out. But here's a true story for me. Last season, I started 0-5 in a keeper league, but I kept playing. I made a trade or two. I used the waivers every single week. My entire division finished under 500. So we had a bunch of teams that were under 500 in the division. This was a league where the top, I believe, 3 went to playoffs. So somebody had to make playoffs, and I had enough points to separate me from the other guys in my division. I went to the championship, and I lost in the championship in that specific home keeper league. So I got some decent money at the end of the day just by not throwing in the towel. So keep in mind, if you're 1-3, if you're 0-4, your streak of wins can be somebody else's streaks of losses. But in this specific question here, tank. So obviously we're talking about dynasty here. Naji, Lamb, and Pittman. I think that side outweighs the other in this. I'm not sure what your depth is, but I'd go for a cheaper route when it comes to filling that running back need. So I know a lot of people right now have lost players that they were banking on this season, whether it's Trey Lance at the quarterback position whether it's Javonte Williams at the running back position. I know a lot of people have been trying to figure out, hey, what do I do in these injury situations? And in this specific one, I wouldn't, trade Lamb, solid dynasty wide receiver, Pittman, solid dynasty wide receiver, just to get Jonathan Taylor and A.J. Dillon, especially when you're giving up Najee Harris as is. So if you just lost Javonte, so this can apply to a lot of people, I would be targeting cheaper running backs that have been pretty productive and have shown us signs of, hey, we can have these guys in our lineups. So guys like Miles Sanders just had a phenomenal week. So maybe, right now is not the exact time to go and trade for him just because he had his huge week. But I don't think he, is a guy that's going to cost you an arm and a leg to go and get him on your fantasy team. Ramondre Stevenson, whose role continues to grow for the Patriots, Kareem Hunt, who was in the shadow of Nick Chubb. Those are guys to me that I feel like are pretty productive and can be productive rest of season, but they won't cost you, again, a dynasty wide receiver like Lamb or Pittman. So go the cheaper route, find those running backs that don't cost as much but can be productive on your fantasy team if you did just lose Javonte Williams. Speaking of Javonte Williams, so we're going to stay on that topic with the next question. This is Keto67. With Javonte out, should I pick up Mike Boone or look somewhere else for help? So Boone came in this past week and played 36% of the snaps. He had 3 carries and a catch. Many note that Melvin Gordon, having a fumbling problem and potentially being in the doghouse is something to pay attention to. I think that has to do with why Boone came in and played all those snaps, because Melvin Gordon fumbled yet again. He has 4 fumbles in 4 games so far. The Sleeper app dropped some quotes, though, on Tuesday from head coach Nathaniel Hackett saying about Melvin Gordon. He called Gordon a quote-unquote true pro, and he called the situation, again in quotes, a great opportunity for him to get right back out onto the field and prove himself. So while a lot of people are concerned that Melvin Gordon is in the doghouse, that Mike Boone, seeing those snaps might be the guy now with Javonte Williams being out, I'd kind of hold off on diving too much into that narrative. Gordon himself, he's had 4 years above 900 rushing yards under his belt. The last time Boone saw a majority of the snaps for the running back position was week 17 of the 2019 season, the only time he did through his career, which started in 2018 in the NFL. So in general, I feel Boone might factor in, but I wasn't really looking to prioritize him for waivers or try, in any way to get him on my team unless Gordon is banged up. I feel like there's plenty of backups that are floating out there on the waiver wire. And I think Boone is a hot name because of the recency impact of Javonte Williams being out. But like Melvin Gordon, let's take away the fumble issue right now at hand. And Melvin Gordon's a guy that's got plenty of great days under his belt. I think that the last 2 seasons, he's factoring in a ton. Last season, he split identical with Javonte Williams. I like Melvin Gordon, and Boone is not a guy unless I'm in a deep league that I'm prioritizing right now, because I feel like there's other guys that can play that same role of just being more of a hey, if the guy in front of him gets hurt, then he'll have a bigger role. So I don't see myself playing Boone with Gordon still present there. So I would prioritize a different player, a wide receiver maybe, that you can actually use in your fantasy lineups. Next question, Ralph 078. Who is a tight end trade target for redraft that will not cost me a ton? ? So targeting players whose cost does not line up to their current production is smart early on. The longer you wait and the more productive guys get, the more they cost. It's just math there in economics. But again, targeting players whose cost is here, but their production's up here. The timing of that's important. So here's some guys that come to mind. So Gerald Everett right now, for example, is the tight end 6 on the year. He's averaging 12.3 fantasy points. Number 7 in yards for tight ends. Number 8 in targets. He has 2 touchdowns right now. Maybe some of that is the benefit of no Keenan Allen. He's missed some time. But we do know that the Chargers, Justin Herbert, that's a high passing volume offense. He's an athletic tight end who's been producing. Another guy that comes to mind right now who maybe a bit more expensive just because he's been balling out, but Tyler Higbee, he's a tight end 5 right now, averaging 12.6 fantasy points. 61 to 73 receiving yards in his last 3 games, somewhere in that range. 2 games above 10 targets with a high of 14 this past game. He is the number 1 targeted tight end right now through 4 weeks of football. He's more important to the Rams right now than Allen Robinson is, which probably stings a lot of people. So I'm listing these 2 guys because coming into the season, the manager who drafted them likely was not planning on them being their team's tight end 1. They're probably like the second tight end that they might have rostered on their team, especially for redraft. So it's not like they are valuing them to, a 3rd round Mark Andrews capital. Guys like Tyler Conklin, Logan Thomas, Hayden Hurst, Robert Tonyan, as of Tuesday, were rostered in under 50% of ESPN leagues. So if you're looking for a stream, you can make the case for those guys. Conklin has been solid for the Jets with his targets and his role on the field. Logan Thomas, I'm pretty sure, led receivers for receptions for the Commanders this past week and saw some decent targets. Hayden Hurst gets enough work even with the 3 wide receivers they have with the Bengals. And then Robert Tonyan, he's getting back connected with Aaron Rodgers. He just scored a touchdown. So, we can look to identify signs that these guys can benefit our teams if we're looking to stream a tight end as well. But again, timing is key when it comes to trading for guys that are productive right now. Next question, Nori1. What's going on with Gabe Davis? If the ankle is bad enough, they don't want to throw to him, why don't they have him rest? He's wasted as a decoy. What is going on? So, first and foremost, anything injury related, go check out Edwin Porras from Fantasy Points and his content. His Twitter is at FB Injury Doc. So he is always dropping injury news and analysis. So I'm never going to pretend to be someone that analyzes injuries. So if you want more information on what's going on with Gabe Davis's ankle, go check out Edwin's stuff. My opinion, though, just throwing some things out here. The 3 games he appeared in, he's played at least 96% of the snaps. So he's out there the entire game pretty much. He's seen 5, 6, and 3 targets, which would rank him for those weeks number 2, number 3, and number 3 in the team when we're looking strictly at wide receivers. First 3 weeks, it was Diggs getting solid volume, and then Josh Allen spreading the ball out to everyone else. Isaiah McKenzie is starting to emerge as a trusted option in the slot, and Josh Allen has a history of utilizing that slot wide receiver. We saw it the last 3 years with Cole Beasley. So while we can say maybe, Gabe Davis's ankle has limited what he could do on the field, I think at the same time, we might also say, hey, like maybe it's limiting him. Maybe he's never gotten back to 100%. I'm not sure if that's the case. I think we also just want to acknowledge, or we should acknowledge, that Josh Allen has been spreading the ball out to non-Diggs receivers on this team. So, Gabe Davis out of that number 2 role that we expected, maybe the volume is just not going to be consistent on a weekly basis, regardless if he's 100% healthy, 50%, or somewhere in between. I think, Gabe Davis provides us for fantasy with big play upside and receiving yard upside and potential touchdown upside, which we've seen before. But I think you might have to ride the waves of, hey, he might only get 3 targets. He might get 5. So, if Josh Allen continues to hyper target Stephon Diggs and then, give some to Gabe Davis, Jamison Crowder is now, I believe, going to be in the IR, but give some to Isaiah McKenzie and the running backs get involved and Dawson Knox gets a couple. You're just going to have to ride the wave. And I think he provides a good flex option, but probably not the most consistent, where some people came into the season saying Gabe Davis is going to be my wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. But I don't know. I guess it's really roster dependent right now. But I think he's more of a guy that, is a flex with upside, because I just don't know if the targets are going to be consistent. But Maybe something will come out about his health and that ankle, but it's kind of how I view it right now. Last question, Caleb 515, and I had to paraphrase this question. There's a lot of motion in the question, and I kept it PG-13. But what do we do with Kyle Pitts the rest of the year? So obviously not an ideal start for Kyle Pitts. Tight end 18 overall, averaging 6.3 fantasy points. Week 3 at 13.7 fantasy points was the only week that really helped you in any sort of way. One of the biggest issues has been volume, though, in general, the last 3 weeks. Passing volume. Mariota, 26, 20, and 19 passing attempts. And you ask, like, why is that? The game script has not been to push the ball down the field because they've been in really tight games. 27-26 loss to the Saints week 1. 31-27 loss to the Rams in week 2. They beat the Seahawks 27-23 in week 3. They beat the Browns in week 4, 23-20. So they're literally in every game. They're not chasing any games where they have to push the ball down the field, which would be in Kyle Pitts' favor. I think a lot of people kind of forget that the game script at times is just not going to be aligning with what we want for fantasy, and that's really the case for Kyle Pitts right now. So if we're looking at some positive signs for him, number 2 in air yards with 333. He's number 2 in deep targets with 6, and this is for the tight end position. He's number 1 in unrealized air yards, which kind of goes with the air yards is as well. The depth of the target is another thing that stands out to me because again, it kind of lines up with the air yards, but his ADOT's been pretty impressive too. 15.1 for his ADOT, so average target distance. 15.1, that's number 1 for tight ends. So he's number 2 in air yards, the distance the ball is traveling in the air. He's number 1 in the average target distance. He's number 2 in deep targets. So those are big play potential stats to talk about when somebody's getting these targets down the field. The issue at hand is just the volume that it's coming in. So I would say, once the Falcons get back to like chasing games, which we expect them to, I actually am in favor of Kyle Pitts because of those good signs. The Falcons play the Bucks, the 49ers, and the Bengals the next 3 games. Prior to week 4, they were in every single game, including week 4. So again, I think once we see the Falcons trailing, knowing that Pitts is number 1 or number 2 in air yards, the average target distance, and knowing that he is that athletic freak of a tight end, unicorn prospect. It all comes together. I still have faith in Pitts, and I know a lot of people are out right now, but I answered a question last week about Justin Jefferson, who I'm not comparing them to at all, but people get really caught up in not seeing the bigger picture, I think, of things. And with Pitts, the bigger picture is that they've been in tight games and they don't have to get, the passing volume numbers up, and they don't have to push the ball down the field. And Mariota throwing under 20 times or right at 20, that's not going to be in the favor of Pitts, Drake London, or anybody else that's involved in the passing game. So take the good signs again that show that big play or more big plays are going to come. Take that, and then also take the fact that the next 3 games, I don't know if they're going to compete as well as they did the first 4. So stick tight with Pitts. Maybe I'm in the majority, in the minority. But unless I have a second option that has been consistent for the first 4 weeks at the tight end position, you just got to roll him out, because the week you don't, he's going to have that 20-point, 120-yard performance that we've been waiting on. And we can touch base about this, in a few weeks and say, hey, do you still feel the same? And I'll be honest about it, because me, as someone who talks about football, I pivot all the time. I back everything I say and I pivot all the time. But, as of right now, still rolling out Kyle Pitts, just knowing that there's a lot of upside for him as long as the volume changes. Thank you guys for tuning in, though, to this midweek mailbag. And make sure If you are not subscribed and you found this on YouTube, that you do subscribe today. That Discord is awesome, and people are very active in there asking questions and getting answers, not only on this show, but from the other analysts with fantasy points. I'll catch you guys later, and good luck in your matchups this week.